You are being gaslit by every screen you look at. Right now, the official narrative is screaming that the economy is robust, yet you feel the weight of every single transaction like a physical blow to the chest. It is a haunting disconnect, a ghost in the machine telling you that everything is fine while your bank account whispers that you are slowly drowning. Welcome to Financial Mindset. I'm glad you're here because we need to peel back the polished veneer of these numbers before they bankrupt your future. If you value this kind of raw, unfiltered truth, please hit that subscribe button. It is the only way we keep this investigation going. The terrifying truth is that a recession isn't coming. It is already here, hiding in the shadows of data that simply hasn't caught up to your life. You see, the experts at the NBER are essentially historians, not prophets. They wait 6 to 18 months to gather their comprehensive data before officially declaring a disaster that you have already lived through. In 2008, the world was ending for a full year before they had the guts to call it a recession. By the time they admit the ship is sinking, the water is already at your neck. We are currently living in that silent, dangerous gap, the time between the actual collapse and the official announcement. This is the mirage, and if you don't recognize the ghost in the data today, you will be the one left to haunt the wreckage tomorrow. To understand how this mirage is maintained, we have to look at the single most manipulated number in the American psyche, the unemployment rate. When you hear that unemployment is sitting at a comfortable 4.4%, it is meant to be a sedative, a statistical lullaby designed to convince you that everyone who wants a job has one. But as I started peeling back the layers of how this data is actually constructed, I realized that this percentage is less about reflecting reality and more about defining people out of existence. The government uses a very specific, almost clinical rule to decide who counts as unemployed. You must have actively applied for a job within the last 4 weeks. If you have spent months facing the cold wall of rejection, if you have been beaten down by a market that feels increasingly hostile, and you finally stop for a single month to catch your breath or rethink your life, you effectively cease to exist in the eyes of the state. Since the pandemic, over 1.6 million Americans have simply vanished from these official spreadsheets. These people didn't suddenly find high-paying careers. They found a dead end and stopped banging their heads against it. This is the invisible workforce, and their absence is what makes the headline numbers look so deceptively healthy. When you look at the labor force participation rate, which has dropped nearly 1.5% compared to pre-pandemic levels, you start to see the true damage. It represents a steady, silent drift of human beings who have been sidelined and forgotten, yet their exit from the workforce is celebrated by the media as a sign of economic tightness. We are being told the labor market is strong, but what we are actually witnessing is mass exhaustion. The system is claiming a win not because it solved the problem of joblessness, but because it successfully made the victims of this economy invisible, treating your neighbor's despair as a convenient statistical adjustment to keep the markets calm and the narrative intact. If the erasure of those 1.6 million people is the first act of this statistical magic show, the second act is far more sinister because it redefines the very meaning of work to keep the facade from cracking. We are witnessing the systematic destruction of the American career, but it's being sold to us as a thriving labor market. The government's data collection has a fatal intentional flaw. It treats all jobs as equal. When a father loses a stable, 40-hour-a-week corporate position with health insurance and a 401k and is forced to drive for a rideshare app and deliver groceries just to stay afloat, the government doesn't see a tragedy. They see net job growth. In their ledgers, one lost full-time career is magically transformed into 2 new jobs. It's an accounting trick that turns personal devastation into a celebratory headline. This is why 2025 appeared positive on paper, despite the 4.4 million Americans who are currently trapped in part-time roles because they simply cannot find a full-time position. We are moving from a society of professionals to a society of jugglers. We've replaced the foundation of a career with the scaffolding of a gig, and the experts are telling us it's the same thing because both involve a paycheck. But we know better. We know that when you strip away the benefits, the security, and the predictable income, you aren't creating a flexible economy. You're creating a precarious one. Every job added in this environment is often just another brick in the wall of a new reality where you have to work twice as hard to fall behind twice as fast. It's not growth. It's a controlled demolition of the middle class, hidden in plain sight behind a curtain of evaporate. We are being forced to bridge the gap between our dwindling paychecks and the soaring cost of survival with something I can only describe as plastic poison. We are living through a period where cumulative inflation has surged by over 25% since 2020. And the brutal reality is that most of us are no longer swiping for a little extra luxury or a weekend getaway. We are borrowing just to keep the lights on and the fridge full. The media loves to brag about how resilient consumer spending remains, but they are hiding the most terrifying part of that story. We aren't spending more because we're thriving. We're spending more because we're desperate. At the end of 2025, American credit card debt hit a staggering record of $1.28 trillion. And with average interest rates hovering around 22%, we aren't just borrowing money, we are signing away our future freedom for today's eggs and gasoline. It feels like we're running on a treadmill that's slowly being tilted uphill while the oxygen in the room is being pumped out. I look at the personal savings rate, and it tells the real, heartbreaking story. Historically, we used to save around 8% of our income as a shield against the unknown, but that has now collapsed to just 4.5%. We are eating our seed corn. We are sacrificing our safety nets and our peace of mind just to maintain the hollow illusion of a normal life, while real income stagnates under the crushing weight of interest. This is textbook pre-recession behavior, and we've seen this exact movie before in 2007, where the headlines cheered for the strong consumer right until the very floor vanished beneath them. Right now, the economy feels like it's running on borrowed time and borrowed money. And the most frightening part is that once you've stretched the rubber band this far, it doesn't just sag, it eventually snaps, leaving an entire generation caught in the wreckage of a life they couldn't afford, but were told was mandatory. When you realize that the very people responsible for our economy are looking at a completely different map than the one you're walking on, you start to understand the absolute power of Goodhart's law. The moment a metric becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. We've stopped managing the actual quality of our lives and started managing a scoreboard, and this obsession with making the numbers look right has created a dangerous distortion of reality. It's a constellation of failure where the leading economic index has declined for 6 consecutive months, and corporate bankruptcies have surged by over 7% to their highest level in a decade. Yet the headlines still cheer. It's like your car's check engine light, oil pressure warning, and brake lights are all flashing simultaneously, but the driver is simply putting a piece of black tape over the dashboard so they can tell you the ride is smooth. This isn't just a string of bad luck or a collection of coincidences. It is a systemic choice to prioritize the image of health over the reality of survival. When the official news finally catches up to the struggle you've been living through for months, don't let it be a shock. My goal as your reality decoder is to ensure you aren't the one caught in the blind spots of their bad data. Stop looking at the scoreboard and start trusting your own eyes, because the choice between being prepared and being blindsided is entirely in your hands.